gonna have a little bit of a deja vu moment here. If you're really fond of this game, please do me a favor and don't watch this video. Alright, now that I've kind of given that away right at the bat, one of the things I find most fascinating about Rare games is every single one of them tries stuff. You ever notice that? Like, they don't just make a game. They're like, oh, well, what if we do this? Or what if we try this? Or what if we push this envelope? Donkey Kong Country, Banjo-Kazooie, Killer Instinct, Diddy Kong Racing. There are other examples, of course, but all of these games have that same aspect of trying to push as hard and as far as they can in common, especially technologically speaking, trying to stretch the hardware and what it can do. This game is no exception. They looked at Mario Kart 64 and said, well, that's okay, I guess. But what if we actually had the models fully 3D and had a full 3D area and had lots of 3D areas? What if we had a hub world? What if we had types of races that weren't just races? And you see the general idea here. Now, that's something I'll always give Rare praise for, is the fact that they try to push things and accomplish something other than just making another game. At least I could say that back in the past. Obviously, I'm not really sure what Rare's been up to in the last 20 years, but I know exactly what Rare's been up to. That's a joke. Point being, I could see that in this game as well. It's clear that this was a very ambitious game, which is funny considering its origins. So I'm sure most of you know this, of course. This was originally being done to be a RTS, a strategy game, real-time strategy game on the N64, which is ambitious and pushing the technology. Sure, yeah, I'm not sure how that would have worked out, but okay. And then it just kind of morphed into a game that was a little bit more theme parky, for lack of a better way to put it. And then they're like, you know what? Why don't we touch on one of our old things? Let's make this an RC Pro-Am game. Until I was doing my research for this video, or rather for this stream, I never realized that Rare made RC Pro-Am. How many of you remember that game back in the NES? I actually enjoyed that game. Another game that kind of pushed the envelope a little bit in how you did stuff, well, it also has the other wonderful Rare quality, which is jank. There's a reason this is in the jank block. As a fresh reminder, jank does not equal bad. Jank equals jank. I've got a perfect example for you from in this game. There's a water level where you're on a hover cart. And there's these logs. And the way the physics of the logs interact with you is who knows what's going to happen. You could just bump into them. You could get pushed under the water, and then the water shoves you into the air, and you skyrocket forward. You could get flung back several feet and completely lose all your momentum. You can get flung forward and go completely through the next section. And I have had all of those things happen to me during the run of this game, so I have camera proof of all of those particular interactions. I'm sure there's other interactions, too. Excuse me. That's jank, right? And Rare games all have jank. They all have that kind of issue. You know, the camera bobbing around in the Donkey Kongs, or some of the control issues in the early Banjo game, or everything about Conker's Bad Fur Day. You get the idea. It's not necessarily a bad thing, though. It's just, it's an additive on top of everything. And as I was playing through this game, I realized that on paper, it's exactly what I wanted out of a racing game. It's what I wanted out of a Mario Kart, to be blunt. So we've got a bunch of races and standard tournament modes. Okay, but there's like a progression, almost a career path, a career mode, if you will. And on top of that, there's other stuff you can do, like running around, catching the bananas and throwing them into your thing, or getting the coins on a level, or fighting a boss fight. Now, some Mario Karts have dipped into that idea, including the DS Mario Kart, I believe, was the one that really did that, and none of the others. But this game actually tried to have variety to its map modes other than just races. Now, I know that sounds strange. Why would you want variety in a racing game? But why wouldn't you want variety in a racing game? Why wouldn't you want to have extra modes or mutators or variety? I keep using that word because I don't have a better word. I'm just going to say it again. Variety to the style and design of play. There's so many things you could do other than just a typical race, right? But all of that's kind of on paper. See, here's the thing. This game was really rushed in order to make the 1997 Christmas release window. Because Rare, for all their stuff, was never really super financially stable at this period in time, despite everything. They had some hits, Banjo, obviously, which came out after this. But they really needed a hit, and they were like, well, this RC Pro-Am game isn't really going to dig it. Like, it'll probably be niche popularity, or niche if you prefer, but it's not going to really get us the numbers we need to keep us afloat. What if we make this a Donkey Kong game? What if we make this a Diddy Kong game? And then we'll have star power. And, of course, this worked because tons of people bought this game. It is an unfortunate truth that if you were to release the exact same game, let's say a 3D space battle game, just hear me out for a second, in the style of Homeworld or something like that, and you release this 3D strategy space battle game, and then you were to, in an alternate dimension, release at the exact same time the exact same game, except it has Star Wars in the title, guess which one is going to sell better? This is the dark side of familiarity effect. People will buy it because of star power, and people, I obviously not everyone did, but quite a few people bought this game because it said Diddy Kong in the title and has him, and here I've got the case right here, it's got him front and center on the top, right? You can see him right there. What's funny is they show the other new characters, but, Diddy Kong is like half, maybe a third of the total real estate on the cover, and that says all it needs to. I never actually raced as Diddy Kong. It just occurred to me. I tried out most of the racers, but I never tried Diddy. Anyways, so they managed to sell. That's cool. But the reason I'm bringing up the whole rushed thing and the whole several iterations of change thing is because this game, despite being fun and despite being reasonably well designed, has several very obvious flaws to it, and all of them can boil down to that rushed difficulty, or the difficulty they had in rushing, excuse me. Obviously, there's some things that are just absent. The game just flings you into it with no explanation of what you're doing or how you're doing it. Nothing really seems to indicate, I shouldn't say nothing, very little indicates how you were supposed to progress. Obviously, you get the first balloon, but I showed this off on camera. If you're just playing the game normally, you see the first balloon, which lets you into the first door, and then you go through the first door, and you do through the first races, and then you have 4 balloons. You need 5 to progress. What do you do? And I asked my viewers who hadn't played the game, what do you do? What's your first thought? How do you deal with this? Small story. The reason this was a premiere run is because back in the day, I did rent this game, got to that exact same point, and put the game down because I couldn't figure out how to progress. And honestly, I just had other stuff to do. So I was like, you know what, fine, screw it. And I returned it and rented something else instead. Because you could do that back in the day. Rentals were weird. Anyways, it's not super clear because, there's literally a scene where the genie, Taj, I think his name is, the elephant shows up and says, I am here to help you. Good luck. That's your intro. Now, I know, manual, right? You're supposed to go to the manual. But you know me, I never give credit for something that's not in the game. So they don't get credit for that. And I'm not saying this to bash the game, though. I'm saying this to show this is a sign of how rushed they were. Because what they did, and this actually makes sense, I'm in favor of this. What they did is, rather than trying to spread themselves thin, they focused all their time and effort on the core mechanics and core gameplay. The races and the 3 racing modes. And that was what received all of the bulk of their attention. Those are fine. Those are fun. And those are easily the best part of the game. No, bar none, right? I gave several positives for that for good reason. It's the rest of the game that didn't receive the attention because they needed the rush deadline. And I'm just pointing out how it shows. So you do have a campaign mode, and you do have a story, and you do have the rare standard of the false ending. You gotta have a false ending in a rare game. I think that's a rule at this point. And you do have all sorts of fun little stuff you could do. And then you have the boss fights. And I was reanalyzing my opinion on this game because I realized that it wasn't so much that I wasn't having fun. It was that I was having fun and then being incredibly frustrated. And really breaking it down, it all sits on those boss fights. Literally over half of the negatives I gave this game are for the boss fights. And again, it's such a shame because the idea is cool, although it's kind of threadbare. Like in the first thing, it's just, you just race around the thing, and you just race through the thing, and then you race around the thing, and then you race around the thing, and then you race around the thing. And there's just a giant guy who's going very quickly, and you have to hit them or outmaneuver them while you're dodging the terrain. It's a neat idea. It's what I'd say like the first step of what boss fights could be in a racing game. But it's something, right? And on paper, I'm with it. And the first time through, most of the boss fights were actually reasonably enjoyable, the tutorial. But then there's the second. And you can kind of tell that either the only people who QA tested it are the people who made the game, or they didn't QA test it at all, because the margin of error is stupid for those. And it just gets frustrating. Now, it could have been worse, and I want to say that in the interest of balance and fairness. They're not the worst boss fights I've ever seen in gaming, and they're not the worst things I've ever seen in racing gaming specifically. It's so easy. Just picture if you couldn't skip the cutscene at the beginning of each boss fight. Picture if you couldn't just hit a button and immediately restart the map. Picture if the each boss fight was like just twice as long. Only twice as long. Or maybe 3 times as long. Picture if they didn't give you certain item distributions in a specific pattern so you could double up on red to hit the boss and then double up on blue to push past them and so forth and so on. It would be easy to explain and showcase these things as being worse, but I do feel like the additional testing and time to polish them would have removed them from being negatives and possibly even pushed them into positives. And I'm spending so much time on this because this was the worst part of the game, bar none to me, and is the only reason I didn't enjoy this playthrough. If I could just eject those boss fights from this game, I would have enjoyed this game. And I mention that because I'm curious how many of you have a similar opinion, especially upon memory. What I'm actually expecting is people going on here and saying, Laura, you suck and you're stupid. Please feel free to say that if you actually think that. Or if you don't, or if you just want to be funny or whatever. But I do feel like if they had polished that out, this would just be a great racing game. Because, and here's the inevitable comparison, I have never reviewed Mario Kart 64, so I can only speak from memory, and I'm always vague about that because that's not a concrete, codified, analyzed thing, right? But I would say this game is probably superior to Mario Kart 64. More frustrating because of the boss fights, but better map design in general, better control, more variety to how you play through it, between the 3 maps. So the Mario Karts have always had different stats for the racers, just like this game does, but you're still driving around in a cart. Only a couple, literally 2 of the Mario Karts, in my opinion, have a noteworthy 3. Let's go ahead and add that up to 3. Have a noteworthy variance in how you drive, either because of car parts in like the recent Mario Karts, or because of the bike versus cart thing back in Mario Kart Wii, and that's it. Having the actual plane mode and the hovercraft mode, as frustrating as it could be, and let me rewalk that, as janky as it could be, and having the cart as different actual playstyles, yeah, I'm with that. And again, there's better variety in the maps. They're shorter, a little more bite-sized, a little bit easier to consume. They've got the coin maps, which admittedly can be frustrating, but it adds an additional mutator on top of just playing through. So it's not just a race, like I was talking about earlier. And it looks better, and it sounds better, and it just generally, I would say there's very little that Mario Kart 64 does better than this game. Only 2 things. One is the Coyote Time thing, which I'm not going to go into, and the other would be the lack of frustration. I mean, compare and contrast Starport Alpha to Rainbow Road, for example. Starport Alpha is, oh god, I think I'm not thinking of the right one. It's the one where you're doing the trench run, the Death Star homage, and it's like, oh my god, and we're being shot by lasers, we have to go through this thing, and then go over here. Compare and contrast that to Rainbow Road, which is boring. In 64s, specifically, which is just boringly going around a thing. And I wanted to bring that up because I don't want to sound like I'm just a Nintendo fanboy or whatever, and I don't want people to mispresume that this game is just inferior to Mario Kart 64. Because I don't think that. I think Mario Kart 64 would have less negatives, but also less positives. Make of that what you will. I don't have much else to actually share on this one. I do wonder if the DS version fixes my issues with it, because I know there's a DS version. I've never played it. I only became aware of it when I was doing research for this particular run. So I don't own it, and I've never tried it. But I wonder if it polishes out those boss fights and removes some of the irritation factor, because if it does, that would just make this flat out a great game, right? What do you think? As always, I am curious of your thoughts and comments. I'm going to go try to get some groceries because I'm out of food. I'll see you around.